Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching from. Thanks for joining us today. We have a lot of fun topics. Actually, I should move over. I always do this. Sit in the wrong spot. Let me put these up. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so we've got some fun topics today, and I do want to talk about some alarming social media trends, TikTok trends, really, but not just limited to TikTok. Also, something you'll find on Facebook Reels, Instagram Reels, or Instagram Stories. But stuff that might look like, hey, that sounds like a really good idea. Strongly, highly recommend that you enjoy the video for the entertainment value only. And as far as travel advice, skip it. So we'll get into that in a little bit. I wanted to give you an update. I know last week we talked about follow the this environmental thing that you can do where it's basically you spend $20 and you get a bracelet. Well, this is mine. No, this is Dean's. So this has got a gorilla, giraffe. Um, yeah, it tracks where it's going, and it also goes towards their different wildlife funds. And it's kind of interesting because you can have more than one person's animal that you're tracking. Hey, Louise, how are you today? Thanks for joining. Um, yeah, it's kind of a fun thing. But what's interesting is looking at the different animals. They do say that the whales and the sea turtles travel the farthest, so that's quite interesting. Sloths, they move like maybe 20 to 30 inches apparently a day. So unless you want to like microscope that sucker, probably not one that's going to be overly exciting to follow. But I wanted to take a look. So I told you last week that we had one of the whales or sharks that we were following had a problem with it lost its tracker or lost its tail or something. And so the decision was made to go with a hammerhead shark. And that was a few weeks ago. But what was interesting is I looked this morning, and as you can see, the last update up at the top there is for April 8th. So it's been about a week. It did start just over here. You can see the marker just by, oh, I moved this stuff around. Um, just by Port St. Lucia, north of Fort Lauderdale, and then it went around the Florida Keys, and then up through west of Cape Coral, which is just south of Tampa. But basically, like I say, it's basically stopped. No further updates. With most of the animals, I'm seeing updates for April 15th. But for Phineas, so I don't know if he's been caught or lost his tracker or what. But what's interesting is, like I said last week, if your animal does lose its tracker, they automatically let you choose another animal. So that kind of keeps it going, keeps it interesting. But like I say, if you want to follow something that's moving a lot, don't go with the sloth because not going to see a whole lot of action on that one. All right, going back to our topics today. So moving on to paperless airport travel. This is a pretty cool thing. I'm pretty excited about this. So this was announced that the EU and the UN were looking at digitizing travel documents. In as much as that you'd still need a passport, you need a valid passport, but you don't need to necessarily show it. And basically, boarding passes would be a thing of the past, which would expedite the whole airport process, which is kind of cool. So basically, what would happen is you would book your flight, or if you're using an agent, they would book your flight for you. Then you would download something called a journey pass. This would have details of your flight, including your record locator, which is your authorization number or your confirmation number for the flight. It would automatically update to show you any kind of flight adjustments, any schedule changes, that kind of thing, as well as it would show you, for example, if you did happen to miss a connection, it would show you the revised information and on your new onward journey kind of thing. But what's cool is, so basically you would arrive at the airport. You would have to have your passport information uploaded to your phone. But it would basically use facial recognition at the airport to confirm that you're there. So there's no more sort of, I mean, you could still do your online check-in, but essentially it's using this facial recognition technology to scan everyone who's at the airport, which, let's be honest, they're probably already doing now. I think we'd be naive to think that they weren't. But instead of you having to then go and line up and speak to somebody or what have you, the system would automatically be able to detect whether or not you're in the airport, which is kind of interesting, because then if you're at the wrong place in the airport and your flight is getting ready to depart and you're on that second last call or final call, probably it could send a message. Sorry. Probably it could send a message to you somehow to say, "Hey, dummy, you're at the wrong gate," or you're "Get out of the bar. You need to be at your gate or you will miss your flight." And by missing your flight, that would mean that you would be having to purchase a new flight altogether. And more about that in an oncoming TikTok trend. But it's pretty cool. I think it would be really interesting, whenever I'm traveling, and I wouldn't say I've lost my passport, but I have certainly misplaced passport, um, more than once in more than one different airport. Um, I've always been able to recover it once I left it on the seat on the plane, as I was getting up, grabbing, make sure you've got all your stuff and anything in the seat back pocket, electronics, notebooks, that kind of thing. And I had either put it down to grab my knapsack, or I don't know, but I was kind of freaking out and I walked halfway back to the gate. Now, once you've disembarked the plane, they won't let you back on. But fortunately, the flight attendants, as they were walking through, had spotted my passport just sitting there on the seat. Fortunately, nobody else had taken it, and she happened to be the one who was in our section. And so she's hollering out to me and handed me my passport. So, crisis averted, but could have been a lot worse, that's for sure. So what's interesting is, so this new technology could come in as little as, they're saying, 3 years, which is pretty remarkable and pretty exciting. Like I said, for me, knowing that it's on my person, but not having to have it readily available, and it's kind of like that Vegas thing where it's like you got one pocket, which is your silly money, you got your other pocket, which is your kind of backup money, you got our other pocket, which is your winnings, save that for tomorrow. At least that's how a lot of people used to do it. Times have changed, though, I suppose. But instead of having to worry about where you last put your passport and your boarding pass, this way it's all on your phone. So you don't need to fuss about it. You're always going to have that with you. So I think that's pretty exciting. Personally, I'm really looking forward to it. Let me know what you think. I mean, they're saying that within 15 seconds of passing through one of these sort of checkpoints, if you will, that your data is deleted. And of course, there's always going to be issues, potential compromising of data or potential breakdown of the systems. I mean, we've seen airports shut down entirely when a system goes wonky. Um, so that's a concern, but it's also a concern when you lose your boarding pass or you forget your passport on a plane or somewhere in the airport. At the bar, I've seen that. Um, so these things do happen. I did a poll, actually. So one of the things that a lot of people say, or friends and family, when I bring up these things, is there's some people who have concerns about the whole process of digitization, and concerns that not everybody's got a smartphone or even a cell phone. To which I always sort of respond and say, no, I do think that the vast majority of people in this 21st century do own a cell phone of some sort. Maybe it's not the newest, greatest Apple phone, iPhone, but certainly most of them have the ability to text and the ability to take photos, that kind of thing, even at a very, very basic model. So certainly that should allow for the use of this Journey Pass app. But what was interesting, like I said, so a lot of people have always said, well, what if they don't, it's not fair for the older people. It's not fair for people who want to eschew technology, that kind of thing. I looked it up and, well, actually, first of all, I did a poll on Monday as far as this goes, and just inquired, what percentage of you thought that it would be something that you would appreciate. 52% it was only 27 votes, but thank you for all of you who did take the time to answer and respond. 52% were all for it. And then there's other breakdowns of, other people were like, I want to see how it works first, a little bit concerned that kind of way. And then I did a poll on Tuesday inquiring what percentage of Americans did not own a smartphone or a cell phone. And it's actually pretty interesting because in actuality, I don't know what percent you would guess it is of Americans who, and I just did Americans because it is the majority of my audience. And also, once you get into, should we look at the Canadian market? Do we look at the North American market as a whole? Do we look at the European market? Because each one of those is very, very different. You have to remember, in Canada, cell phones were extremely expensive up until really only a few years ago. And maybe not cell phones per se, because you could always pop down to the US and buy them, but cell phone packages. I mean, it was basically a rape and pillage situation. And I shouldn't use that phrase because it shouldn't be taken lightly. But I mean, we were getting screwed in terms of the prices that we were paying. And I used to always, if I ever went down to the States, I'd look at, what's the price for, what is it, Sprint? Or, all your other great cell phone companies. And I'd look at the prices, and it's like, what we would pay for in a month or even 2 months is sometimes what you guys were paying, what Americans were paying for a whole year of service. And like, I could call to the US, I can call Canada, I can call to Mexico. And here it's like, well, if you're calling outside of British Columbia, the province that I live in, you're gonna have to pay extra. And if you want to text, oh my God, it's gonna be extra charges. So we have been quite envious for a long, long time of the rates that you're paying, but the prices have come down a lot. So that's made everything a lot more affordable. But anyways, like I said, in the example I looked at was just for Americans to see what percentage owned a cell phone. And it turns out 98% of the country owns a cell phone. And not of those, but as a whole, out of all the population of the US, 91% of them own a smartphone. So the rest of them, I guess, just have, old basic phones that could be used for making phone calls, perhaps texting, that kind of thing. So, is this a hardship to move forward on the whole digitization? I don't think so. But let me know what you think. Do you think it's fair or unfair? I will say that running bilateral processes where you're going to have one that's, old-fashioned paper process and one that's completely digitized is probably not going to work, because it's very difficult to integrate those two levels of processing. So it's hard to say if that will come through or not. It might just be that basically if you want to fly, you got to go digital. That's it, full stop. And there might be some assistance areas at the airport if you do not have a cell phone, because they're certainly not going to. They're not going to want to turn away that business, but they are going to put the emphasis on making it easier for everybody. So I think that's an okay thing. So I also today wanted to talk to you about some pretty crazy TikTok trends, and they're not just just to make it easy. I do limit this to TikTok, but it's not specific to just TikTok. These are trends that we're seeing on Facebook, Reels, Instagram stories. It's kind of everywhere, and what's interesting is some of these videos are getting millions and millions of views, and the question is it a good idea, or is it maybe that's a good idea in certain circumstances, or is it just a downright dumb idea that you should avoid at all costs? So here's one that's trending now. I will show you these videos, but they do not, unfortunately, have sound accompanying, probably copyright music anyways. So that's probably not a bad thing. Which one do we go with first? We're going to go with that one. Okay. So this one is a trend where people are basically showing people how to sneak booze on a cruise ship. So I'll play you this little clip here. Again, no sound. I don't know if you can hear me right now. This is a pretty short clip, but basically what the guy's talking about is, oh, let me go back to this one. Sorry, just fiddling with the views. Basically what he was talking about is these people that are suggesting on social media ways that you can scam the cruise line, ways that, because you're not legally allowed under their contract to bring booze on board. On Carnival, for example, you're allowed to bring one bottle of wine or sparkling wine on board, and it's just a regular sized bottle, 750 mils. You're not allowed to bring one of the big bottles. You're not allowed to bring hard alcohol, beer, any of that. And Carnival's got to the point where they're actually clamping down on it. These people were showing things like, how to hide it in your clothes, how to bring it in different bottles. What's interesting is a friend of mine, actually, when we were going on a cruise last October, he was showing me how, if you have a bottle of booze, so I've got a little airline size bottle of vodka. I've got a little airline size bottle of Beefeater, and I want you to look really closely at what happens when I shake it. Okay, so we got a bit of bubbling going on. Bubbles continue, bubbles continue. Okay, I'm gonna try the same thing with vodka. A little bit less effervescence, but nonetheless, you can even still see a bit of a foam on the top. And then this is a bottle of just plain old tap water. And that's pretty much it. So there is still a little bit of effervescence, but not as much as you find in alcohol. So that's probably the first way. If you think, oh, well, I'll just put it in my water bottle, that's probably the first way that they're going to crack down on it. But also, there are sensors when they're going to x-ray all your bags. So they're going to check and they're going to see if there's liquids. Same way as when you're going through the airport, they're scanning and they can find out if you've got liquids that are in too big of a container. So yeah, they're clamping down on this. And in the past, it used to be that if they would find booze on your person or in your bag that was more than what you were allocated, basically they would confiscate it. Some cruise lines would return it at the end of the cruise, but they would withhold it so that they could, I guess, per se, manage your alcohol intake during the cruise. Because, of course, everything's tied to your key card, right? Because you have to pay for the booze, or you have a booze package, so you have to show it every time to purchase or acquire a cocktail or a glass of wine, what have you. So That's what like I said, it used to be they would confiscate it, perhaps give it to you at the end of the cruise, or perhaps confiscate it and ditch it, or maybe it goes to the crew. I don't know. But what they're saying now is they are, basically this is causing them to lose revenue because people are bringing their own booze on board. And as part of the contract that you sign when you agree to take this cruise, you're agreeing to adhere to the rules and restrictions that they have in their cruise contract. And if it very clearly says that you cannot bring alcohol on board, then basically, it's kind of like committing fraud, you're scamming the system. And what they're basically saying now is the punishment could now include losing your cruising privilege for the current cruise, or worst case scenario, you could face a lifetime ban. I'm sure that's probably something that is a stepped punishment. In other words, like if you've done it once, slap on the hand. If you've done it twice, then maybe they take it and keep it. I'm sure it's not just going from one thing to drastic, but who knows? It might also depend on how much of a transgression you've decided to embark upon. If you've brought the equivalent of 5 bottles of wine, punishment might be a little bit more than you snuck a bottle of your favorite beer on board or what have you. So I think the booze packages are so inexpensive now. I just don't think it's worth the risk, especially if, as I say, the cruise lines, especially Carnival cruise lines, are going to be stepping up and really throwing the book at you if you break the rules. So the next one is this thing called airport theory. I don't know if you've heard of this. Let me know if you have, or if you know somebody who has talked about this, talked about trying this, or tried it. Basically, and I've got a video, but I'll show you the concept. And this is a video somebody did who, unfortunately, the plan didn't go well. But the concept is that people take a look at the actual time it will take to get from curb to the gate. I know in most airports, okay, London Heathrow and Gatwick, they are massive airports. And I don't know, it seems to take forever from the last point where you can sit outside of security and have a snack or a drink to your gate can sometimes be 40 or 50 minutes walking time. So I would certainly never try anything like this there. But certainly a lot of American, Canadian, Mexican airports are maybe a lot newer, maybe a lot more compact, maybe better designed. From in Vancouver, YVR, Vancouver Airport. I've gone from being dropped off at the curb and I always do online check-in, right? So that's the first hurdle. You're not doing that. If I don't have to drop a bag, then it's like you can bypass all of that. I've often had preferred status. So, I might go to a line where there's one person ahead of me. So that's not overly burdensome. And then it's going through security. And if you know your local airport well, you might know that there are more than one ways to get through security to get to the other side. And certainly that is the case with Vancouver Airport. If you're flying internationally or domestic, we have an AB gate and we have a CD gate. And CD gates, their entry point through security is often a massive line, whereas the AB gate tends to be more domestic, so it's a shorter line. So now you have to walk all the way from what would that be? The south end of the airport to kind of like the north end of the airport. So it's a good hike. But I've done that in 17 minutes before. So airport theory is basically the concept of arriving about 30 minutes prior to your flight, knowing that, and now it's going to depend on the airline, because each airline has a different guideline for when the doors will close and when they'll officially close. They may have a little bit of wiggle room for people who they know have checked in, dropped a bag, so they know they're in the airport. And they may wait for them a little bit, or people who are trying to do a connection because there was bad weather at some point, that kind of thing. But basically the concept is pushing the limits on this and arriving like 30 minutes prior. Now, personally, I enjoy the whole part of going to the airport. Yes, I find it a bit stressful, annoying. You lose all your control. But I enjoy the whole, you're at the airport, you're traveling somewhere, go and get a coffee if you're one of those people that drinks coffee, get a beer if you're a person who drinks beer, or just get a snack and just kind of enjoy it, seeing all the people that are traveling somewhere. 90% of them are traveling somewhere happy. So, especially if it's international. So, it's a fun environment. So I enjoy getting there early. And by getting there early means I don't have to stress about, traffic, especially here in Vancouver, where it's kind of like San Francisco. There's a lot of bridges and tunnels and all this kind of stuff. So, when it comes to transit, if you don't plan effectively, you can find that your window for getting to the airport and getting there on time has closed dramatically. So here's the video. This is what this one woman was trying to do. She's trying to get there with minimal time to arrive to her flight, and didn't quite go as planned. So, yeah, and that video actually went more viral than some of the others where people were encouraging that behavior. There was one interesting one when I looked it up, and just go on TikTok and look up airport theory videos, and you'll see a bunch of them. There's one of this one woman who plays 3 characters, which is pretty easy to do on a TikTok video. And it's basically a portrayal of her and her friends, and she's the nervous one, and she's like, okay, guys, let's go to the airport, let's get going. It's we're 2 hours before, let's get going, come on. And they're like, no, what are you talking about? Don't you know about airport theory? Like, we're not going to get there until half an hour before our flight. And the original woman is like, oh my, no, that's just way too late. I can't do it. They're like, no, you should definitely just wait, hold off, it's fine. So many people, this is a new trend, everybody's doing it. And she's like, no, I can't. I'm too freaked out. And so she's like, no, I'm gonna get a car. You guys do what you do, but I gotta do this. I can't. I'll be freaking and stressed out, and it's just not good. Oh, no, we're gonna wait, it's fine. And then it shows her at the airport, like pretend phoning her friends and going like, where are you guys? And she's not only is she at the airport, this is the stressed out one, because she got there early, she's already on the plane, she's sitting there and she's calling her friends and like where are you? You should be sitting beside me. What's going on? Oh my god, the traffic is so bad, and I've never seen the TSA lineup this big before. Like, oh my, I don't even know if we're gonna make our flight. Where are you? And she's like, well, I'm on the plane. And they're like, well, you have to get off the plane. You have to wait for us, like, because we're not going to make it. And she's like, well, I was here on time, so I guess I'll just go to the beach and the pool and hang out for you guys and wait till you show up. And, it was, I don't know, what would you do in that situation? I think I'd be annoyed with my friends. Would I get off the plane and try to then negotiate getting an alternate flight? What if I have to pay for another flight? I don't know. I don't know if I'd be willing to take that risk. So, yeah. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Everybody's quiet today. Very, very quiet. Everybody must be at work, busy doing other stuff. Either that or nobody can hear me and you're just kind of watching. I don't know. All right. So my next one is how to film like a boss. There's a lot of incredibly talented and creative people on, TikTok, Instagram, you name it. Personally, I prefer TikTok to any of the other platforms. I mean, YouTube's obviously my favorite, but TikTok would be my second favorite. And it's just interesting to see some of these different trends and also to learn. There's a lot of really informational, educational videos on there. It's not just stupid dance trends and, make a song about this song or make a video about this song, that kind of thing. Oh, there's Howard. Howard's saying, "No way, I'd be getting off the plane." Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, especially if they're the ones who decided to take the risk, it's like, "Okay, well, you wanna test this theory, go for it." But that doesn't mean I'm testing this theory with you, you know? Like I said, especially if I'm gonna then be in a situation where I'm gonna have to pay another 2, 3, $5,000 to book a new flight, and then possibly lose a night's hotel and all that. Yeah, I just think no, just no. So filming like a boss, like I said, there's some videos that I've watched that are incredible and have some really great ideas um, on doing videos and stuff like that, and how to film things. And I keep having bold ambitions, plans, and dreams of doing a bunch of these videos when I'm on vacation. But I think it's like the little squirrel syndrome where it's like, "Oh, I should do this video," and then, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'll have another drink. Yeah, yeah, I wanna do this video where I'll film, I'll go walking on the beach, and then, oh, I'm really hot. Oh, you're going for a swim? Okay, I'll go for a swim with you. Okay." It's like I'm too busy vacationing and I keep forgetting about all this stuff. So I almost need to have, like, a workbook, and I've thought about making one actually, um, of just how to do social media, these video concepts to, film like a pro. But yeah, oh, Howard's saying yes, life would never let him get to the airport late anyways. Yeah, I think there's always like one half of the couple is like that. The other half is usually like, I don't even know where we're flying. And then the other half is like, okay, we need to leave in 2 minutes, and I've already called an Uber, and so it's all good. It's all good. That's what balance is for, right? Okay, so I want to show you this video. It's an interesting concept, and the idea is, the windows slots that close on a plane. When you're in the window seat, you can pull down the flap. I don't know what cover. Let's call it cover. You can slide down the cover to make it darker in the cabin to prevent the beaming sun from coming in and making you overly hot. Or maybe you want to sleep on the plane. I don't know. But the concept has been for some people that they'll basically put their phone in the window to take a time lapse of the sunset, the sunrise, or just a time lapse of them flying or taking photos, what have you. But basically, you turn on your phone, your camera, or your video, and you put it in the window and you close the slat, and it holds it for you. But let's look at what happened in this scenario. Yeah, whoops. So, obviously that's a concern, and that would probably be a person like me. If you can't see it, it doesn't exist. But also, so there's basically a few different points on this one. Um, Basically, number one, it could cause your phone to overheat, which is extremely dangerous. And I see people at resorts all the time that they decide they're going to go for a swim and they basically put their phone down, screen side up in the beating sun. And then they hop in the pool and they're in there for 20 minutes or an hour if there's a swim up bar. That sucker is going to overheat in no time. So, of course, when you're in a plane, a little bit more of a fire hazard, so that would be my concern. You could scratch the window pane and cause some damage to that, and I don't even know where to begin on what the airlines would charge on something like that. The planes, I think they have like triple panes of glass, so I don't think that's a per se something that you need to get paranoid about and worry about it being a safety concern, but for sure, it could be a problem. And again, if we're going to move to a digitized form of travel, if you forget your phone on the plane, I mean, geez, these days, like I use my phone for everything. I've got my air tags, so they're tracked or linked to my phone, so I can tell where my suitcase is, where my bags are at all times. I have all of my flight information, all of my reservation codes on there. If I lost my phone, and I've had my phone stolen before in destination, and you do feel like you're a bit lost. It's not a good feeling at all. But more importantly, I think the number one reason to not do it would be that when you're doing a video with your phone, it is the thing that uses the most battery. And if you're at a window in the sun, point blank, it's going to heat up or overheat. So I would strongly recommend against that one. But like I said, it's a trend, and this is what we see out there. And would I be tempted to try it? I don't think that I ever have. I've done other things with the thing to use it as a transition. Sort of going to a dark screen and then opening it up and you're in destination, that kind of thing. But as far as actually putting it into the window and using that as a holder, no. But I'm curious, like, what other travel trends have you seen on TikTok or other social media which have made you go, And whether or not there's scammy suggestions, whether or not there's safety consideration recommendations, there's a lot of information out there. And I think first and foremost, you have to take it as just pure entertainment. But should it be something that you engage in and participate in? I don't know. So, yeah. Oh, hey, thanks for everybody. Everybody's like, there's 5 thumbs up on this video already. Thank you for that. And if you're watching and you haven't already done so and you've enjoyed this video or you enjoy my videos, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Doesn't cost anything, doesn't hurt anything. Not going to get any spammy emails for doing it. So, or 10,000 texts. If you do click the bell button to get to subscribe and to get notifications, then you will get notifications if I'm going live, if there's more videos coming up, that kind of thing. But it's pretty limited. It's not even close to. I don't know about you guys, but like sales companies these days, they're kind of going crazy on like spamming you for business. I've had 2 quotes lately, one for some yard maintenance and another one for some painting, a painting job. And the one woman, she like literally texts me or calls me every other day. I don't know if this is a trend of what's going on in the economy, that businesses are really desperate for sales. But to me, that's just too much. If I'm curious and you follow up with me, that's great. But don't follow up with me 15 times. Like, read the room, right? Yeah. So I do have the trip booked. I know that we talked about this a little bit last week. So did have to rejig everything. Was actually, I think, supposed to be flying out this weekend. But rolled everything back a little bit because the prices right now are stupidly expensive. So actually going to be heading out next month, going to Cabo, and I'm going to be staying at the Sandos Finisterre, which I'm equally excited about both properties that I'm going to be staying at. But the Sandos Finisterre is just a beautiful resort. It's built up into the hillside, and it is just architecturally stunning property. No, okay, I'm staying in a basic room, and the basic rooms are, desperately in need of renovation, but they're also the room that I would always choose, because they have the best views, in my opinion. They have a view of the pools down below, as well as looking out to the ocean. So next month is sort of at the end of whale watching season. It's a little bit dependent on the weather and the ocean temperatures. Mostly it's from mid-December until mid-April. But you can be sitting on your balcony, you can be sitting in one of the bars, you can be sitting on the beach. Again, most of the hotels in Cabo are not on swimmable beaches. And by not, I mean they will actually at times have the Navy out there making sure that nobody's going in the water, because it is just a life and death situation. It is desperately dangerous. But it's just a beautiful view. And like I said, always pack binoculars if you're going to Cabo, because chances are you're going to see something. When it's not whale watching season, you'll often see dolphins jumping in the ocean playing, and also manatees. I didn't know that they like to jump, and they usually have like a cluster of them. And so all you'll see with the naked eye is a bunch of what looks like splashing out there. And it turns out it's these manatees that are, jumping and playing. So that's kind of cool to see. So yeah, really looking forward to that. And that's also right at the marina. So great for, walking around and, visiting all the different restaurants and bars and stuff like that. Gonna for sure hit up Una Mas, which is one of my favorite bars. Cheap beers and funny, sarcastic, humorous, friendly bartenders. And then also Sancho's is another one of my favorites, which has really good deals for food and drinks. And a lot of expats tend to go there. And it's just, again, a really fun environment. And again, uh, right on the marina. So that's always interesting to see. Oh, hey, Angelo, how are you? Last minute chat trend. That's a good one. I like that. Yeah. Good one. Um, yeah, so heading to the Santos Finisterre, and then after that, going to be heading over to the Rio complex. And I wasn't sure where to well, I wasn't really sure where to stay. I like the vibe at the Rio Palace Cabo San Lucas, but it's not adults only. And in my opinion, the food and the beverage at Rio Palace, Baja California, is a little bit better. The rooms are newer and more spacious, so that was the win for me. And so going to be heading over there and hanging out. They have pickleball courts. I didn't get a chance to try it last time. Um, Oh, I didn't see any questions. This must have been from last week. Um, certain areas of the water had rocks under the sand as you enter the water. Must be talking about Punta Cana, I'm guessing. Um, yeah, so anyways, like I said, looking forward to going to the Rio complex. And, again, staying at the Baja California means you have access to all three properties. The Rio Santa Fe is the more basic of them. So, really, it's more like local brand alcohol, that kind of thing. Although I did see that lately they've been improving things to have more name brand alcohols. So it'll be interesting to see, a year later how that compares. Oh, okay, yeah, so he's talking about, Secrets Cap Cana, okay. And Howard saying his wife just booked Ocean Maya Royale for 10 days in November, no flights yet. Flight prices are crazy right now. Yeah, I mean, you just gotta keep an eye on them. The It's tricky, and if you're going in November, you can't wait for, like, a Black Friday sale. But yeah, just like I said, keep an eye on things and, just book it when the prices feel right. But, there's not a whole lot of options. It's not like I've oh, I forget where you are from, Howard. Um, but, certainly it's, it's challenging to find decent priced flights these days. So, oh yeah, Hamilton, right. Um, yeah, so I mean, well, at least you have more options than we do, because you've got Transat, Sunwing slash WestJet, Air Canada, and even Porter. So, oh, Secrets and Dreams of Rona just raised their prices. Well, I suppose they had the introductory rates going on. So that kind of makes sense, just like any of them um, when when they first open up sales, the prices are very, very low, and especially if you're booking direct with a hotel, usually there's no penalty. So they're in other words, they're fully refundable. So if you're thinking about going, it's well advisable to book your space. So definitely that's something that I'll be doing as I start chasing these vivid openings around the world. Well, not around the world, in Punta Cana and in Mexico, in the Cancun Mayan Riviera, in Acamel. Really looking forward to that. Yeah, so I'm curious. I just actually last night watched again another video of 𝖳tu𝖾li𝖾. He's another vlogger, video reviewer. He he's younger than me. I'm guessing he has to be, and it's interesting to hear different people's takes on what they think of the different properties. So he did a video where he ranked the 5 different RIU properties in Punta Cana from what he thought was what he ranked them from worst to first, and he rated the RIU Palace Bavaro, which is the one that I stayed at, as third. And I didn't necessarily agree with some of his choices. And I think that's the whole point of having so many of us doing these different blogs. I know Christine, her travel agent, is Brittany from Memories and Mojitos Travel. And, her and her husband, they've been to the RIU, was it the RIU Palace, either Aruba or Antilles? So they had a review video on that. They've recently come back from the RIU, the Hyatt Vivid Grand Island. So it's just interesting hearing what people think of different resorts, and and then sharing the information. For me, like, I'm not trying to convince you. Well, maybe sometimes I am. Yeah, sometimes if I think a resort's great, then yeah, I'm gonna try to convince you to check it out, because if something's amazing, why wouldn't I want you to? But mostly I'm just trying to give you the information. You decide for yourself, because one person to the next, one person, for example, is totally good with Hyatt Vivid Grand Island having a massive pool area and not being on the beach. The next person is going to say, I wouldn't even book it if it's not on the beach, regardless if it's got a beach club. So, everybody's different. So that's the whole point. But I'm curious to go back to the RIU Palace complex in Cabo, especially now that Elite Club is fully up and running. It's been over a year for it, and just see if there's any changes that have been made. You recall that when I was in Punta Cana, the interesting thing was between those different properties, the only sharing there was for lunch buffet. So not breakfast and dinner, which is interesting, because at the RIU Palace, the RIU complex in Cabo, you could go to the RIU Santa Fe, you can go to the RIU Palace Cabo San Lucas. If you're staying at Baja California, if you're staying at RIU Palace Cabo San Lucas, then you can go also to RIU Santa Fe, and you can do breakfast, lunch, or dinner buffet only. Can't do the a la cartes, but you can go to the bars. You can go do all of that. Whereas when I went to Punta Cana, it was like, no, not quite the same exchange situation. So, yeah, it was interesting. Oh, and Louise said, saw his video yesterday. Yeah, there you go. Looking for party vibe. Yeah, younger single guy. Okay, shorty party places in Vegas. Yeah, exactly. So, and like I said, I mean, I would guess. I don't think he's in his 20s. I'd say he's maybe in his early 30s. Um, but he's well traveled, and he's confident enough that he knows what he likes. I'm not trying to disparage him in any way. It's just he's just looking for something different, and that's if I was 20 years younger and single, maybe I'd be looking for something different too. Um, it's just interesting. Just interesting to see what different people's opinion is of places. But like I said, he's a big proponent of the Rio Palace, Baja California. And I'm like, well, I like the vibe more Rio Palace, Cabo San Lucas. So, to each their own. But yeah, it's all good. It's all good. We're all just here having a good time. And who doesn't love talking about travel or watching travel videos, right? Oh, high 30s. Okay, okay. Well, he's got a I don't mean to make this sound condescending, but if it would, but he's got a level of maturity about him. So he's like, I think he's looking to have fun, but not stupid fun, if that makes sense. Like he's not just there to like, let's do a bunch of shots and get drunk. Like he's there for fun and interaction with people, that kind of thing. So anyways, those are my 2 resorts that I'm going to next month. Super looking forward to it. Maybe not quite as exotic as some of the trips that you guys have planned, but it is what it is. This is what I have planned for next month. And I'll be going live from there as well to show you what it's like and checking it out. So if there's anything that you want to know about those properties or anything you want to see, I haven't seen a lot of recent videos of the Sandos Finisterre. It's a little bit higher in price range, but I think in the end, it's worth it for the view. Although I will say, and hands down, out of any Rio property that I have stayed at, that hands down, the Rio Palace, Cabo San Lucas, their beachfront, second, third floor lobby bar has the best views out of any Rio that I've ever been to. And that's what really made me want to go back there. Um, it just, to me, it's just relaxing, just sitting there, having a drink, looking at the view, seeing the waves, seeing the cruise ships coming in. Um, I just think it's really cool. And don't forget, if you are going to one of those places, go to cruisemapper.com. You can access it for free and you can see what cruise ships are in so that maybe those are the days to avoid doing any activities where you're going to be going to public places that other tourists might be frequenting because could be busy. So thanks for tuning in, everybody, and thanks for all your comments. And if you haven't already done so, it looks like a couple more have hit the thumbs up. But if you haven't already done so, go ahead and hit that thumbs up, please. Really helps out the channel. And we will be back here next week on Wednesday, same time, same place. So looking forward to chatting with you then. Oh, right. Yes, Howard. A little bit disappointing. They seem to be cutting back on little things. Yes, and Howard was telling me about the the big floating raft that they had in the pool. I know they used to have one that was a taco a floating taco bar. But I think you said there was one that was like mojitos or margaritas or something. Remind me if you can. But it sounded pretty cool. Margaritaville, of course, is it used to be called the Azul Beach Resort. It's on a beautiful soft sand beach, although the water tends to erode the beach there. And in the last week or so, there's been quite a lot of sargassum in the area, which is unfortunate. Yeah, so Angelo, that's Margaritaville in Mine Riviera. What would we call that? I guess Mine Riviera Cancun, basically by Puerto Morelos. And near not the new, the Puerto de la Bonita, which used to be under AM Resorts and is now under Playa management. So this would be most of the Hyatt Ziva and Zolara resorts. That's the company who is now managing the Puerto de la Bonita. Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah, so he's saying they still have the floating taco bar, but they had an Aperol floating bar for one day. Tammy, if you're watching, I know that that would be right up your alley. Yeah, so Cancun. Yeah. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thanks for your comments and all your contributions. It's always great to hear from you when you've been someplace, to hear what your take is on it, and yeah, just to get some feedback. And also, like I said, Howard, thanks for sharing about the sargassum situation, because you just never know from one week to the next, one day to the next, what it's going to be like. Typically, if they have a big storm, then that's going to it's going to churn up the waters and it's going to bring it all in. So that's always a problem. But sometimes the next day it could be crystal clear. So it's, you just can't predict. They call it Margaritaville, Cancun. Okay, so there we go. All right, thanks everybody, and we're going to wrap it up, and we shall see you next week. Have the great rest of your day. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you next Wednesday. Bye for now.